Thank you. So we're going to continue the cloud conversation with a distinguished panel. So I want to bring the panel out and let's go on. So the first speaker today, or first panelist, is Jeff Deacon. He's the Chief Cloud Strategist at Terramark, a Verizon company. Jeff, sorry. And then John Gates, Chief Technology Officer for Rackspace Hosting. And our leader today is Mike Fratto. He's the editor of Network Computing. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So I wanted to start off talking about use cases of cloud services. We hear about a lot of the big cloud companies, a lot of the big startups, the internet-facing companies, and they're neat and they're interesting use cases. They're fun to look at and to see how they're designed. But not every company out there is going to be internet-facing. They're not going to have 1 million people coming to their sites on a daily basis. So what are some other use cases that enterprises can get value out of the cloud, and how are they going to do that?
Yeah, so I got a couple examples for you. One well-known company, Coca-Cola, is using Rackspace Cloud for some of their test and development environments. So sort of behind the scenes. It's not a public-facing website or anything. It's really enterprise IT, but in a test and dev context. Another customer, I guess this is internet-facing, but it's very much enterprise-centric. It's an e-commerce site for a company called Under Armour. They make sports apparel. You see them on all the football players every weekend. And they're running e-commerce across a hybrid environment of our dedicated hosting business, which is our traditional business, plus a lot of the cloud infrastructure that we're doing. And that's allowed them to shave a lot of cost out of the equation, save money, respond to demand when they see it. You know, they're an e-commerce business, and therefore they spike during certain times of the year, and really it's been a big win for them.
Okay, great.
And some of the examples that we've been seeing, we have a couple airlines, American Airlines, JetBlue, as well as a large hotel chain that has leveraged our cloud for their web front end, as well as a main data repository. But what they have done is connected their global WAN back into the Sabre system so that they can clear the airline reservations and the hotel reservations back into Sabre, as well as extending the WAN down to all the US-based airports so that they can actually print out boarding passes that clears back into our cloud. So, you know, in that situation, they're leveraging the cloud resources, but there's also those legacy mainframe apps that they're connecting back into, and then the point-of-sale terminals that actually print out boarding passes.
So Jeff, you're bringing up an interesting point. You know, that there seems to be focus on cloud architecture, and how do enterprises leverage a cloud architecture and push their applications out to a cloud as well as their data, and make sure that they're going to be responsive, quick, and fast acting. And what are some of the strategies that you see your customers using?
So depending on, you know, we tend to see, you know, the people that are running public-facing websites. Not as much of an issue because we have a very robust, you know, internet architecture directly into peering points, so you don't see, you know, latency packet loss issues there. Companies, about 40% of our customer base actually extend their global MPLS WAN into our infrastructure, so that allows us to do quality of service, packet loss guarantees, jitter, things like that. And then the rest of our customers are doing it over an IPVPN. So in those situations, you know, there's only so much we can guarantee, you know, once we get past our network segment. So I think depending on, you know, the tier of apps, what we're starting to see are our customers' tier apps based on networking requirements and performance requirements. And depending on what they are, it dictates the access method that they use into the infrastructure.
Great, thanks. John, what are you guys saying?
Yeah, so I think you know, what we've done to try to help our customers bring more applications to the cloud and maintain performance that they would sort of expect. We've tried to really give them all the technology in one place that they would need without sort of forcing them to rewrite their architecture, rebuild their application. So one of the things we've done is built a technology we call Rack Connect, which is our flavor of hybrid architecture, hybrid cloud. What we do is allow customers to put traditional physical devices, bare metal servers, virtual machines, based on VMware or whatever hypervisor they want, SANs, NASs, solid-state storage on sort of the dedicated side of our house. But we connect that over low latency and high bandwidth connectivity into our cloud environment, where you've got the elasticity of the virtual machine environment, the cloud storage in our cloud files platform, and really bridge those two together into a very coherent architecture where you don't really have to make the trade-offs that some people sort of associate with cloud architecture. It's not like you have to rebuild for a completely temporary environment where anything can fail at any time. We've sort of built a lot of those enterprise expectations into our cloud environment.
So the failover and resiliency is built as part of the service.
Yeah.
And then as far as application response time, the applications and the data are residing out in that cloud environment rather than tromboning back to a data center and pulling data in and out.
Exactly right.
That's what I'm hearing. Okay. So that brings up another interesting point, though, with as organizations move their applications from their data center out to a cloud provider, how important is it on that move to have a vendor ecosystem or industry standards to be able to make that movement from one location to another, and then all the attendant instrumentation to manage and monitor and maintain those services that are out remotely?
Well, I think that's what enterprise customers are sort of used to, is that single pane of glass, or they've tried to attain that sort of single pane of glass across their infrastructure within their own environment. And now what they're looking forward to is a future where cloud can be brought into that picture seamlessly, where you've got management tools, instrumentation, visibility, the ability to deploy and manage your environment as if it was all under your control. Now the challenge is today, that's still a ways out. We're not 100% there yet, but I think there's some things that are shaping up in the cloud ecosystem to make that happen. I think one of the things that we've been working on that I'm excited about is this idea of an open source cloud platform called OpenStack. And what we're hoping with OpenStack is that it provides that ecosystem of people starting to work together to build that underpinning for a single pane of glass management framework.
And one of the things that we see with our customer base, we have some customers that are very comfortable in managing their application. They have a large IT department. They have policies, procedures, tools, management consoles, patching best practices. So we have an unmanaged platform for those customers so that they can seamlessly, either via IPVPN, MPLS, or with the acquisition we made a couple months ago, CloudSwitch, wholesale take virtual machines, whether that be VMware or Xen, move them into our infrastructure without having to change IP addresses, without having to change host names, authentication mechanisms. They're monitoring, they're patching systems, and they can just move that wholesale without any modifications into our cloud, onto our unmanaged platform. And then for customers that may not have that expertise, we have a managed offering. And in that situation, we provide our customers with a hardened Microsoft or Linux operating system. We deploy our monitoring agents, our backup agents, and our patching mechanisms, antivirus, things like that, so that they're assured that they have a secure computing environment. So we really view some customers cross the line, but in most instances, customers tend to be unmanaged or managed, and kind of the way we view it is the unmanaged is almost the new co-location option, right? Instead of having to have people rack and stack servers, we provide that, right? But it's fundamentally an unmanaged service. They buy CPU, memory, disk, and then for the managed customers, it's almost like web hosting 3.0. It's a much lower cost basis because we've automated so many things. We get much better utilization through the virtualization technology, so we can cater to both customers.
Great. So, so enterprises put their applications out in the cloud. They're relying for some, hands-on from the services that you guys offer to maintain the infrastructure and all of that, and that's great, and it works. However, one of the perceptions that we hear a lot from enterprise IT, and whether or not this is a fair perception is a different discussion, but we've seen in the last year a number of very large public cloud meltdowns, and how do you guys guarantee uptime? How can you guarantee that kind of resiliency that organizations are looking for, and are those expectations realistic, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, the way I've heard this question a number of times, and a lot of people do have a valid point that, that you hear a lot about cloud downtime or outages, but the truth of the matter is, I think in the grand scheme of things, they're probably down a whole lot less than in aggregate the enterprise data center is. If you think about the enterprise data center, there's a lot of outages there. We've heard about some this week from very large companies. They're having trouble, and they're not in the cloud, but they're having outages. And then there's many more that you don't hear about because they're sort of not internet facing or very public, and so they happen behind the curtain, and they're just sort of swept under the rug by internal folks. The truth of the matter is the way that most cloud providers run their data centers, at least the big well-known ones, they run them with very high levels of redundancy at the data center level. The infrastructure, power, network, all of those things are very reliable and redundant. The software that we're building is very redundant in nature. A lot of the stuff that we're building is resilient and self-healing and those kind of things. The truth of the matter is, I think it's a perception issue. I think people, I use an analogy a lot around airplane travel versus driving your own car. And in an airplane, because you don't fly the thing yourself, you sort of have this perception of I'm not in control. In your own car, you feel like you're in control. You feel like you can control your own destiny. But the truth of the matter is, airplane travel is much more safe. It's proven. It's engineered to be safer. It's got a long track record. Reliability is there. And I think those are the same concepts that are at play in cloud versus do-it-yourself data center. It's very hard to put as much engineering effort and money, people, 24/7 ops, all those kind of things go into building a cloud-style data center. But it's just tough to achieve that. So I think over time you'll see that the cloud will probably trump internal data centers as a reliability story.
Jeff?
Yeah, and there are certain lessons learned and policies and best practices that occur when you run a large amount of data centers. And currently we have over 200 around the world. So you learn things over time, but an outage can occur, and they do occur from time to time. But generally, what we see is it's either some type of human error, fat fingering a configuration on a router, a server, a switch, whatever it may be. And in those situations, with the cloud, you're automating much more than most companies do within their data center. So the more you automate, the less likelihood that you will have an outage, because the vast majority are related to that. And, in our situation, they're tier 3 minimum type facilities, N+1 power, clustered servers, dual power supplies, dual fiber channel, dual 10 gig Ethernet. So, when you build that type of architecture, and eliminate as many single points of failure, automate as many possible things that you can do, you can get down to a very, very extremely low failure rate, and you can get to, easily get to 5, sometimes 6 nines reliability. And for those customers that really cannot tolerate any downtime whatsoever, the prudent approach is to have a multi-data center strategy, so that when that unlikely event does occur, you have a fallback mechanism. Now, it's not cheap to do that. It often more than doubles the cost, but if you can't tolerate any sort of downtime, that's kind of the approach that you should take.
So that was going to be my next question: is what can enterprises do to improve their uptime? Because at some point, a service provider, a cloud provider, is responsible for, say, everything up to that hypervisor VM layer. So make sure the networking, the storage, the servers, and all of that stuff is continuing to work. But once you get up into the VM layer, you guys really do sort of lose some visibility there. I mean, is that the point where the enterprise takes over and they have to start doing things like global load balancing across multiple data centers and different kinds of architectures? Well,
one thing I would point out is that not all cloud providers are created equal. And so one of the things that we do at Rackspace is we do take responsibility, at least in our managed offerings, of your cloud all the way up the stack into the operating system layer, into the database layer, into the application server layer. We will actually monitor that for you. We will patch it for you. We will take corrective action when something fails, and those kinds of things I think speak to enterprises because they want to hand off some of those responsibilities. They don't necessarily want to build a 24/7 ops team to not only manage their own stuff but then also figure out what's going on in the cloud. They do like those managed services to go along with it, and I think that's one of the things that Rackspace has done that translates from our roots as a hosting company into a cloud company. I also do think that cloud in and of itself is a key cost-saving mechanism if you do want to do DR. I think if you think about what historically you had to do with sort of mirrored sites like you were describing, in the old way you sort of had to have your primary data center with all your hardware racked and stacked. You owned it, you used it for your primary app, and then you had to have a secondary site that you built almost exactly mirroring the primary. At least with cloud, you can sort of turn off or turn down some of the secondary site until you really need it. You don't pay for the resources while they're just sitting there, sucking down energy. You pay for them when you actually turn on that redundant site. So in many cases, customers can at least build some disaster recovery type strategy at a deep discount to what traditionally would have been required.
And we tend to see a spectrum of companies that want to have additional information, and we also craft our SLA and uptime guarantees based on customer requirements. So generally, in our managed cloud customers, instead of giving availability SLAs, we actually give transaction-based SLAs. So that we're watching the wide area network links, the connections back into maybe their data center or a third-party data center, and we're guaranteeing that a reservation will take place, in under a second, right? And so we're responsible for fixing any faults that they may see. For other customers that don't want to have any sort of contention, on an actual physical server, we provide the ability to give dedicated 10 gig Ethernet links, dedicated SAN fabric back into an enterprise sandbox, and then they are responsible for putting the virtual machines on their own dedicated hardware. And then for customers that go with the fully shared multi-tenant model, we try to provide as much data to that customer as we can. Obviously, there's security issues when we give too much visibility into the hypervisor itself, so there are some limitations. So, really, it's speaking with the customer. Are they looking for outcome guarantees? Are they looking for guaranteed availability and no sharing of resources with other customers where they may have some contention, or are they okay with that model? I think over time, a lot of the things that are happening with OpenStack, the Open Data Center Alliance, the Open Compute work that's being done, a lot of these things over the next year or two, I think, will mature very rapidly.
Okay, great. I mean, so you brought up security. We don't have very much time left, but I wanted to sort of touch on this very quickly. Security governance is actually a better term. Is top of mind for a lot of organizations. It's usually one of the top two or top three objections to moving to the cloud. So how do you address some of those governance issues in a cloud service? And you've got a minute.
Yeah, so I think what we try to do is, again, translate a lot of what we've done for many, many years in the traditional hosting environment, working with enterprise